Okay, welcome everybody to our first episode of Torah and Psychology. And the only way to begin learning Torah, the infinite compressed into finite, the divine wisdom that's here to change our lives and help us learn ourselves, is with a little bit of simcha, joy. So here's what I chose to bring us in. Does anyone remember Jock Jams?
To the main event.
Let's get ready to rumble! Please get out of your chair and join me for a 1 minute dance party.
Y'all ready for this?
Yeah. Oh. Slow. Cut out the sound effect. Hey! All right. So I did not do that just because I feel like being silly or I wanted to, I don't know, manipulate you into joy. It's really important. Like we can't fool ourselves. If our aim of this course and our aim of our life is doing Judaism authentically, then you know what? If you're not in a good headspace and you want to learn Torah, you know what Torah learning is going to feel like? But if you bring yourself into a good headspace, then your heart is open to receive all of that wisdom and then to begin to integrate it. So let's say you sat there in your chair and watched me for that last minute of dance party. Maybe pause the video, rewind, and try again, or put on your own favorite dance party music and get yourself started because genuinely there could be no greater introduction for me to a Torah that absolutely changed my life and the way that I live on a day to day basis without great joy and gratitude to the master of the universe who shows me these psychological insights that are sourced in the Torah itself and in our Kabbalistic and Hasidic wisdom. There's no way I could express gratitude for a lifestyle that helps me incorporate this and bring more joy into my life. So, let's begin. And before we begin, now that we've encountered joy and now that we've thanked God for this opportunity, to dedicate this next little while of learning to anybody that needs anything. So, if someone close to you in your life needs their soulmate, or needs a healing, or needs money, or whatever you think it is, let's just take a moment of grounding. Please, God, send that person whatever it is they're needing. Okay, so we're going to begin. I'm not even going to tell you what this lesson is about before we do an exercise. So I need everybody to please go ahead and get yourself a pen and a paper or a pencil or a paper. You could write it on your phone if you want, but preferably, I really prefer these good old writing instruments. And I want you to please write down the following thing. I want you to please write down on this piece of paper who it is that drives you nuts. Who crawls under your skin? Who, when you see them walk into a room, do you cringe? What member of your family, just whatever they say, it just triggers something in you? Okay, so I want you to please write that person's name down on a piece of paper. Please don't show it to anyone. We want to make sure we're very careful not to, God forbid, embarrass anyone or anything like that. And then I want you to please get mean. Mean and judgmental, as mean and judgmental as you possibly can. Okay? So and you really have to let yourself feel free here because we're not trying to be light chasers. What I mean by that is those of us who feel spiritually elevated or conscious might say, okay, I just don't like them, but that's their business. I don't need to look at it. I don't need to judge them. I don't need to be mean. That's my JP Sears imitation, right? We might think like, well, I'm so holy. I don't need to look down on anyone. But the truth is, most of us are looking down on people all the time. So let's just get real with it. So you take a person and you write their name down on the paper, and then you want to write your harshest judgments because, and please use curse words if you feel like it. Again, this is like a therapy session. but live. So you really got to get real. You can't walk into your therapist and say, well, my spouse is bothering me, but I understand, right? Or my mother is I'm experiencing a little bit of frustration, but that's okay. Like, you don't walk into your therapist office and be nice. You want to get real with the realest of the real of your feelings and say it how it is. So now you have that person's name on your paper. It could be someone random from your community, it could be someone in your family, it could be a friend, it could be a classmate, be a teacher, somebody you see online that you don't even know, and just say all the reasons you hate them. Okay, so she's or he's, they're so fake, they're such a B word, they're such an A word, I find them so arrogant, they disgust me, blah, blah, blah. Please write out all the nastiest judgments that you can about this person that feel true to you. All right, so let's just give that a moment. I'll make a l'chaim on some cinnamon almond milk maple syrup coffee. It's very exciting. I already made a bracha and I have to declare that so you don't think I'm drinking coffee without making a bracha. Okay, so once you have those reasons written down why you don't like that person, make sure that you really got mean and judgmental. And I'm going to do personal examples in a moment, but for the meantime, just really get it all out there. They're ugly, they're this, they're that, they're annoying. Like, let your meanest self out. Okay. Exercise number 2. I also want you to please choose a group of people that drive you crazy, whether it's ultra-Orthodox Jews or Reform Jews or Trump supporters or hippies or any group of people that shares a value system that when you see them, you just get triggered. Write them down and say all the reasons you hate them as well. And if you don't know, that's okay. That's part of the work that we're going to do, but we have to start somewhere. Okay. So now that you've written those things down, I'm going to reveal to you the topic of this lesson. If you have yet to write them down, please pause this video and do the exercise yourself because it will get much deeper when you have personal examples to work with. Okay. So if you've done it, I'm going to go forward. If you haven't, press pause. Pause. We're from New York today. Please press pause. Okay. All right. So now, when I had to think about what would be the most important, valuable way to start off this course in Torah and psychology, I realized that I wanted to use the lesson from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was a Hasidic master from approximately 400 years ago. And what he is known for is taking deep, high, difficult, esoteric, Kabbalistic lessons from the Kabbalah and bringing them down to earth so that a simpleton could really understand these profound, infinite truths. And this Torah is what I call, this lesson is what I call the mirror Torah, or in the words of Sarah Yehudit Schneider, you are what you hate. How could that be true? What do you mean? No, I'm not anything like them. Okay, so this mirror Torah from the Baal Shem Tov suggests the idea of resonance. Well, I'm going to share just what that means. So perhaps in regular language, you've been able to express, oh, that resonates with me, or that doesn't resonate with me. Or let's say with artwork, right? You see a painting and you can't explain why, but it's just like, it touches me, right? Or you see a painting, you're like, that doesn't resonate with me at all. Like, I don't get it. And also with music, right? Sometimes music, it just pulls on the heartstrings. It resonates. And sometimes it just like that song your friend really likes, you're like, I don't get it. So here's the best way I can explain resonance. So I'm going to explain to you a scientific fact. You see that guitar, that guitar. So let's say that I have perfect pitch. I don't, but if I did, I would know how to sing the A note, right? The guitar has 5 strings on it, and one of them is the A string. So let's say I had perfect pitch, and I could just sing A. Now that's probably not an A note, but let's imagine it was. Now, if I took a microscope, this is a scientific fact, I'm not making this up. If I took a microscope and I put it on the A string of that guitar, and the guitar was in tune, and I had the correct A note, what you would see is you would see the A string vibrating. Ooh, that's such a cool effect. It really works. You'd see the A string vibrating. When I'm over here, 10 feet away from that guitar, if I do A, the guitar string is going to go like that. That's resonance. Resonance is when something inside of me starts to move because it relates to the thing outside of me. This is what the Baal Shem Tov was saying with the mirror Torah, or the idea that you are what you hate. So I'm going to explain this a little more by giving the following example. Sometimes we see people or things that we don't like. It doesn't vibe with us, it doesn't resonate, it's not our way. But like, we see it and it doesn't do anything to us emotionally. So for example, top of my head, let's say I don't have a problem with smoking. Okay, no problem smoking, never been tempted to smoke, and I'm quite healthy and I treat myself well physically. Well, if I pass the street and I see someone smoking, I might not like it, right? I might be like, "Oi, poor guy. I wish that he knew that was poison." I might not like it, and if that's my whole reaction, I can move on. I don't necessarily have what to learn there. But if I see someone smoking and it drives me crazy, like it gives me that trigger, that cringe, the second I feel triggered, that trigger is just like the guitar string going like this inside of me. And why it's resonating with me, like the Baal Shem Tov explains, is because it's a mirror for me to see something inside of myself. And here's the key that I may have been denying, I might be lying to myself about. The second there's that trigger around a person or an idea or a thing or a group of people, I know that actually it's my work. It's my work. It's now or never. Okay. So this has absolutely changed my life, because now when I'm in a situation or around people that trigger me, I feel grateful to Hashem that He's showing me the work I have to do. In being a person who pursues spirituality and personal growth, one of the most frustrating experiences is when we don't know how to change, we don't know how to grow, we don't know what work to do. But when you hold this lesson of the mirror Torah, of the idea that you are what you hate close to your heart, you'll have work to do infinitely, almost every day, because pretty much every day, at least in my life, something triggers me a little, like gives me that little like, I'm uncomfortable, or I don't like it. So what we're going to do is we're going to explain, because it's not always so easy to see. We're going to explain quite a few examples, and then we're going to see if you can do your own work. All right. So first example is the simplest kind of resonance training. I say resonance training, yeah, train yourself to see what resonates with you and what doesn't resonate with you. So like this. There was a woman in my community who really, really drove me nuts. I really didn't like her. Okay, now I'm not like going around telling people this. It's just if I'm being honest with myself. When she walked in the room, and I say walked in the past because I've now done the fixing and it doesn't bother me anymore. And that's what I'm hoping to offer you by the end of this session. So she'd walk into a room and she'd be loud and she'd interrupt, and she was like kind of put together in an annoying way, like you're always put together. And she just was super confident, and she just irked me. Every time I saw her, I was like, ugh, I was upset that she was there. Or if I was hosting, I sure hope she would never ever come, because I would just, she just drove me crazy, right? So now if I'm triggered, then I have work to do. So the first and most simplest, easiest way of understanding this concept of you are what you hate is very simple. Then it dawned on me pretty quickly. Oh my gosh, I'm exactly like her. I walk into a room, I'm all comfortable, I interrupt, I'm loud, I keep myself presentable, and I have my own judgments about that. And so it was so clear, actually, the reason that I hate this woman is because I'm so similar to her. And in that moment, I had to then investigate inside of me and say, am I comfortable with my loud behavior? Am I putting my confidence into a room in a way that's like a bit more bulldozery, and maybe I'd like to be more gentle? Do I fear that I get dressed nicely every day just to preserve my self image and maybe I don't actually want to do it? So I could look at all the different components about what was bothering her about me and see very clearly that it was totally a mirror of myself. And I was so not comfortable with my own loudness that her loudness was driving me nuts. So that's the simplest example of when you don't you don't like someone, you might come to find that they're exactly like you. Um, okay, so that's number one. Number two, it gets a little more complicated. And number three will get more complicated. So let's do number two. So the second example is there's another woman in my community, and I feel so uncomfortable being around her. And actually, I didn't know why. And she didn't have traits that I saw in myself. And I actually kind of admired her traits. And when I realized why I don't like her, I realized it's because I'm jealous, right? She's able to really beautifully deliver Torah in a calm way. She's an accomplished yogi. She is very genuine and heartfelt and can access her emotions easily. And so this was simple example number two. It's not that she was what I was, it's she was what I wanted to be. She is what I aspire to be, and I'm not yet. I'm not yet a yogi. I don't yet deliver Torah in a way that's soft and gentle. I don't access my emotions easily. And so being around her drove me crazy because I saw everything I wasn't. And instead of just admiring that and sending her love, my insecurities were flaring like crazy, and it's difficult for me to be around her. But instead of just projecting my dislike outwards, I want to own my feelings. I want to own my trigger and learn. Well, look at that. And perhaps we'll do a whole episode on jealousy another time. But in the simple, look at that. I'm triggered because I'm really jealous. And when I learn what I'm really jealous of, I also learn what I'm really, really wanting. I definitely want to increase my yoga skills. I definitely do. And this is just a mirror for me to say, hey, Neely, the reason it drives you so crazy that she's so good at yoga is because you really want to get good at yoga. And instead of just simmering on that, I can either let it go. I'm not going to make time in my life for yoga right now and find joy and happiness for her. And that could be my own path. Or I could say, hey, Neely, this is a wake up call. I think you're saying you want to do more yoga. So that's the second level, right? The first level we said is when the person's exactly like you, and we realize that's the trigger. The second is when they're not like you, and it could be jealousy or something else. And here's the third one. And this example is my absolute favorite. Okay. So there's a woman in my community. And if you're like, wow, Neely really doesn't like a lot of people, I don't walk around life being like, I don't like you, I don't like you, I don't like you. But that's not conscious. But subconscious, if I'm being super honest with myself, I can realize that I struggle with all these different people. So there's a woman in my community like this. She's blonde, and she's actually struggles. Well, okay, let's just say it mean, because I told you got to access the judgments mean. She's a drunk, totally a drunk, just a lush, just drinks all the time. It drives me crazy. She dresses really immodestly. Like every time she sits in a certain way, I just see right up her skirt. I could tell you what underwear she wears just to be graphic. She wears summer dresses. It's just like, oh, I'm like, God, she's so immodest. Okay. And then also, she is what I judge to be really irresponsible and selfish. You hear all those judgments? Drunk, immodest, selfish. And what was the last one I gave over? Oh, irresponsible. Okay. So this woman is driving me crazy. She's driving me crazy. She's driving me crazy. I can't figure it out because what am I saying? And this is what you might be saying to me at this moment in time. Neely, it doesn't make sense. I don't like that person, but I'm none of those things, right? So if you know me, you will know that I'm not a drunk. I don't, my body doesn't like alcohol, so I don't drink. I don't drink. I've chosen for the most part to choose a modest style of dress. So I'm not really what I call a hoe. I'm not skanky the way that I judge her. And let's say, okay, so irresponsible, not irresponsible. Queen of responsibility over here. Um, if something needs to get done, I'll make sure it gets done, or I'll let you know so that we can compensate. And fourthly, selfish. This is actually the last thing I would judge myself as. I've been practicing selflessness for a really, really long time. And so here's the example that it played out in my life. When I host a Shabbat meal, I make sure that a lot of things happen. I make sure that the whole meal is ready hours before Shabbat. I make sure that there's enough food for everybody, and not just that. I also make sure it's decorated beautifully. I'll put a sprig of cilantro, of coriander. I'll put all the spoons in the right direction. I'll make sure to have a table runner of gold or silver, just something to make it really beautiful. I want that when every guest walks in, that it should be it should smell nice, and there's candles everywhere, and that all the food is ready so that no one should have to help me when they get there. They could just relax. And I just make sure that the meal is going to be a really beautiful, calming experience where they come in and they get taken care of. So now, what happens when I go to her house for a Shabbat meal? Because again, this is actually a friend of mine, a friend for many years. So I have times where I go there for Shabbat. So you walk into the house, and again, she's drunk, and she's not dressed in a way that I deem appropriate. And she didn't even start making the meal, and a lot of times she doesn't even have enough food. And she expects that when you go there for Shabbat, you start preparing the food with her. Oh, and here's another level of selfishness. Check this out. So like, let's say I left prepared macaroni and cheese for Shabbat. When I invite her, she'll come into the kitchen and pick the cheese off the top for herself. So I'm like all over these judgments. I'm like, you're so selfish. You are so selfish. Okay. You're so irresponsible. And I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs to the Baal Shem Tov 400 years ago, how can this be a mirror of me? How can this be a mirror of me? I'm not a lush. I'm not immodest. I'm not selfish, and I'm not irresponsible. And these are the things that are driving me crazy about her. So then, boom, one day it all became very clear to me. Somewhere deep inside, even though I'm happy that I'm not a lush, I'm so jealous. She just gets to live life like a party, always having a good time. Because of the alcohol, there's no worries. I wish I could have that. Now, again, it doesn't mean I actually wish I could have that. I don't wish upon myself to be an alcoholic. And may Hashem bless everybody who's struggling with alcoholism. But look at the fun she has, right? The immodest dress. Yes, 10, 12, 13 years ago, I chose to start dressing modestly. But you know what I miss? I miss jeans. And I miss summer dresses, and I miss tank tops, because although I do appreciate the fact that I go around the world dressed relatively modestly, I miss short sleeves, and I miss short skirts. And I miss the freedom of not wearing shorts or leggings under everything I wear in case I sit the wrong way and someone should, God forbid, see it. I miss that freedom and that ease and that comfort. And selfishness, this woman has become one of my greatest teachers, because I realized I've been way out of balance with being selfish or self-full. I was doing for others, and I was neglecting myself. And when I saw this trait of selfishness, what I judge as selfishness in her, it drove me crazy, because you know what? I'm out of balance here, and I want to just be able to think of myself more. I mean, in 100 years, I would never, ever pick macaroni and cheese off my own Mac. But now maybe I'll give myself permission just to take a little bit, just for my own joy. That thing that was driving me crazy about her, she was doing for her own joy, and I wasn't. And fourthly, responsibility. Looking at her and the irresponsibility trigger made me realize that more than anything, I want permission to be a little less responsible. I want permission. What a cool thing if one day I could imagine inviting guests over and being like, oh, we'll figure it out. Yeah, I'll take care of it. Come on, everybody, let's go to the kitchen. You help me cut the parsley. That's like, I experienced so much stress and anxiety around hosting and around being perfect and around being seen in a certain way. that when she doesn't even care, I'm so jealous. I'm jealous of her confidence. I'm jealous of her lack of fear to invite people to join her in the effort and not having to have everything perfect. And I really wish that I could just, again, have that ease of being what I judge as irresponsible. Again, maybe not all the way, but a little more. And so, looking at this example really taught me that I am what I hate, meaning I am in a struggle. I am seeing a direct mirror for me. And yes, it's not the same, but it does show me something deep inside that I want or that I don't want. And then from there, I can learn how to grow myself. And so, usually, at least while I was, I've been becoming, evolving as an adult, when I get upset at someone or angry at someone, it was just a source of annoyance. It was just a source of frustration, and it could drive me crazy, and I could think about it. But when I learned this Torah, this psychological idea that I am what I hate, or that it's somewhere within me, or that it resonates, now every time I meet someone who triggers me, I'm actually really grateful because I feel like I've met my greatest spiritual teacher. And that I realize that all the people and all the groups of people that I'm triggered by are actually my greatest teachers. I'll give you a few more examples. So I also am hoping that that you'll be able to take that example that you first wrote on your paper and start to unpack and unfold the reasons why this might be a mirror Torah for you, what this is resonating with you. Okay, so now let's move to a group of people. What group of people drives you crazy and why? So, believe it or not, as a Torah teacher, I've been teaching Torah since I'm 12, all right? That's like, I don't know, more than 20 years. And a religious woman who sometimes I question my own, religious sanity, believing in all these things. Okay, that's just being really real with you. Like, I'm really quite religious and devout. My whole life revolves around Torah. Guess who I get triggered around? I get triggered around groups of ultra Orthodox Jews, Haredim. I sometimes see them and the anger fills up my heart. It's like, what? What do you mean? You teach Torah. You live Torah. That's what you post about. How could it be that I hate Haredi Jews? So it's not that I hate Haredi Jews. It's that if I'm being honest with myself, I feel the trigger inside my body when I pass them at certain points. So if I feel the trigger, then there's going to be resonance. I can learn from the mirror Torah. Say you are what you hate. Look in the mirror. So what do I see when I look in the mirror of my discomfort around ultra-Orthodox people? Again, I see a form of jealousy. It looks so easy for them. They're so serious about practicing Torah. They don't seem, I mean, of course they do, but it doesn't seem on the outside like they struggle with all the things that I struggle with. It just looks like holiness is their natural flow, and they don't have to deal with all the temptations to sin that I have, or the temptations to tune into cultural things like, let's say, movie and music and news, all these things that might be corrupting me that I still want to be in tune with. They've cut that out already, and I'm just like, gosh, I have this like, not I wish I could be you, because a trigger doesn't mean you wish you could be them, but you wish something like them. I'm really happy, let's say, with the way that I choose to do my Judaism. I don't think that I would work so well in an ultra-Orthodox lifestyle, but if it works for you, that's awesome. But what I do see is like my desire for holiness, and that seeing them looking so holy in my judgment is like, I want that. And I also don't have that way to do it. And it's frustrating for me that I have to find my own way to holiness. Like they just got a path, they could follow it. For me, following a path so strictly, it doesn't work, but I still want the same holiness. And so when I see them, I feel triggered. And so I learn about myself that I'm really yearning for holiness and I'm struggling in my journey. And now, when I learn those things about myself, it opens up all sorts of possibilities. Another way to understand this mirror Torah is with the following Hasidic idea. And that idea is that everything you see, everything you hear, everything you experience is perfectly designed for you. And by nature of the fact that you saw it, or you were affected by it, or you heard it, it means that it has to do with you. So For example, one day I was walking in the streets of the old city in Jerusalem, and I saw a mother yelling at her child. So if I would see a mother yelling at her child and I would just be able to walk by, so I probably don't have any work to do in that area. But if I see a mother yelling at her child and it triggers me and I'm like, what the heck? What's wrong with that woman? Why would she behave that way? And it did. It really, really triggered me. Then I have to look at it. And I have to realize that I have something there, because if I didn't, either it wouldn't trigger me, or I would have walked out of the house a minute later, or I would have walked down a different street and not seen it. But the fact that God gave me this gift, this experience, what I was seeing, means there's something in it for me. And you know, what was it really? I didn't want to see anger, because I have anger, and I deem it so ugly. These anger traits. So seeing anger was really, really difficult for me. But look what it points to is, Neely, you wouldn't have seen it if you don't need a reminder to work on your anger. You know, sometimes people see different news stories and it really affects them. And I'm like, oh, I didn't hear anything about it. And it's because I didn't need that message. You did. Or I was recently in a place where a fight broke out. And I didn't see it till the very end, but a friend of mine saw it from the beginning and was very traumatized. Well, the message is there for that person, not for me. So I believe it requires a great level of humility to finally come to terms with the fact that everything in our life is a message for us, and it's never about the other person. All right, let's just repeat that. It's never about the other person. And in fact, the one that you hate the most, the one that's driving you the craziest, the one that triggers the crunk out of you, is actually your greatest spiritual teacher. And when we come to embrace this idea, we come to, first of all, letting that anger and that hate settle out. And what it starts to become, it transforms into a great level of gratitude, because then my entire life begins to become this experience of where I can look around at my frustrations and angers and say, wow, thank you so much, God, for showing me where I need to grow. And it's amazing, because what happens is, now around my blonde friend who is naked and irresponsible and selfish and, a hoe, I can be around her now without all those triggers, because I'm so grateful when she does something that drives me nuts to realize this is my lesson. Now, you don't have to hang out with those people anymore if you don't want to, but once I realized it was my work, so it's okay. The anger, the hatred, the trigger, it simmers, because I can access gratitude for them being actually a gift of a teacher for me. For what I have lived 37 years and not seen about myself, my blind spots are pointed out subtly and softly by God. So, we learn these concepts, but then to begin to integrate them is what begins to change our lives. So my challenge for you is to take that name that you wrote on that piece of paper and start to do an analysis of the 3 ideas that we suggested. Either they're exactly like you, and that's why you hate it, because you realize you might not like that quality, or you want to refine that quality about yourself. They're nothing like you, but perhaps you're jealous of that which they have. Like I encountered recently a male friend who didn't like another guy, and it was so clear to me to see, because this guy is like confident and suave, and my friend like wants to be more that way. So that was really difficult for him to see. And then the third one we said is that it reveals something even deeper that you didn't see. Perhaps you want more permission to be a certain way, or perhaps, well, I'll give you another example, okay? This is for the 3rd level, which is the most complicated one, which is where you really can't see why it's like you at all. You just hate them, but that's not like me, we say. So I was at my brother's house for Shabbat, and my niece had his phone and he asked for it back, and she said no. And I was like, dang, little bi, you know what? Like, ew. And then I was like, okay, I'll deal with it. So I go into a room and I try to say, like, oh, maybe there's something wrong, maybe whatever. And I was like, please give me the phone. You have to listen to your dad. He asked for it back. And she was like, no. And she brushed me off and she like walked in the other direction. At this point, I was like, like my inner monster was coming out. I felt it. I was so angry with her. She's 10 years old, right? And so I was like, all right, Neely, integrate the work, see what's going on here for you. Couldn't figure it out right away, but I kept thinking about it. And I realized that when I was a little girl, I grew up in a very strict household and I did not have the right to say no to an adult. And my little Neely is still probably a little upset about that. She wanted to do things her way and she never had permission just to say no or to reject authority or to go against what the adults said. And little Neely was looking at this 10-year-old with the strength to say no. And it was like mind blowing for little Neely inside because she was never given that permission. And at that point, even though I'm not little Neely, and now I do have the right to say no to authorities or to adults, I can go back and give little Neely some compassion and empathy because I see her pain still exists. And I can say, wow, Neely, I'm sorry that it was so hard for you that you didn't ever feel like you could go against authority or stand up for yourself. So I was able to tune back to a younger version of myself and address her needs. So this mirror Torah, this you are what you hate Torah is so profound and it's sourced so deeply within our tradition. I'm not going to bring the sources today, but please God, in the future I can just list some of those sources because it's really all over the Torah, this Torah and psychology idea. And it can teach us about ourselves. It could teach us about our desires for the future and what we're really wanting. It could teach us about the pain of our past. And again, when we can begin to actually play with these ideas and integrate them, it's a tremendous relief and a tremendous release and it's a tremendous opportunity for growth for the rest of our lives. So I bless us to deeply take this idea into our consciousness of the mirror Torah. Again, it's not just when we don't like something, it's when it triggers us. And we can look at that trigger and say, why is this a mirror for me? And how come it's never about the other person and it's always about me? And from there, I bless us with deep, deep Torah psychological insights and a life of greater ease and joy and growth, because that's what we're all here for. That's why you're watching this in the first place. We want to grow. We often don't know how or where. And so this lesson can point us exactly to those places inside. Says, oh, you can grow here. Oh, you can grow there. Oh, you can grow here. Oh, you can grow there. Oh, you want to grow in that talent. And it's really a magnificent way to give ourselves a chance to grow in authenticity. So I bless you with success and looking forward to our next lesson in Torah and psychology.